So, Humberto, during these troubling times, I thought the listeners might just enjoy us just talking about random things, and frankly, I might enjoy that too. What do you say?
That sounds like a plan.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Who are you, Humberto?
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I design teddy bears.
So I asked on Facebook for people to submit questions, and here are their questions. Rita asks, Humberto, actually, I asked them to send questions for you. So this is focused on Humberto time. Think of yourself as being on the Charlie Rose show, and you're trying to avoid being sexually harassed. Rita says, didn't he sexually harass people, by the way? Didn't Charlie Rose, wasn't he accused during the Me Too movement?
Charlie Rose was?
I think so.
Really? Oh, wait, that actually sounds familiar.
I don't know. He seems like an unlikely sort of guy, like the Matt Lairs of the world. You're like, yeah, I could see that.
Right.
But the Charlie Roses, it's like learning that Alex Trebek did it. It just doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so Rita says, Humberto, tell us what you really do for a living. She says, I think, honestly, you are a tattoo artist.
Oh my gosh, that would be very interesting, especially because my brand of tattoo artistry would be, a little different than normal. So, everyone's doing Asian characters, or they're doing maybe Buddhist things or yoga things. I would be doing anime and shitty anime, but so yeah, no, I'm not. I have full disclosure, I've been running a family-run teddy bear business for the last 20 years, and we make. I don't usually like to talk about it because teddy bears are very personal to people. They're very personal to me. In fact, no kidding, my very first little toy in the world was this little Winnie the Pooh stuffy bear that was very little, and I still have it to this day. It's the last remaining vestige of my childhood, the only toy, in fact, that I have from my childhood, which is sad, but it's missing a nose. It's wearing a Mickey Mouse shirt that's too big for it because I lost the original red thing a long, long time ago. But so because of that, I really care about teddy bears.
Yeah, and I have to say that you're pretty consistent with this, but for Christmas, you didn't even get me a teddy bear, which I noticed. But honestly, after the dozens that I have in a box somewhere I keep one or two out that I like, but it was both a nice respite from having to put more in storage, but it was also I don't know. I felt like maybe you didn't like me anymore.
I was trying to send a message. I'm sorry. Maybe I was too subtle with the message.
All right. Jesse says, which is an equally, I think, poignant question here that everyone wants to know about you, Humberto. Uh-huh. When you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, do you put the peanut butter and then the jelly on one side of the bread and then put the other slice over it? Or do you spread the peanut butter on one side and the jelly on the other? Also, do you include butter or margarine? What about separate utensils for scooping out the peanut butter and the jelly? Berto, people want to know, what do you do?
Yeah. No, these are great. Hard hitting, but great questions. A little hard to answer too, because I know this is going to be listened to by lots of people, and so I really have to make sure my answers live up to the expectations. Look, I have a very consistent way of doing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I don't think any other way really works well for my purposes. I don't think anyone else should use another way. I toast the bread. That's the first thing I do. I don't want it too toasty. I do not like burnt anything. Don't get me this is delicious charcoal chicken with the burnt skin. I hate anything that tastes carbony. Hate it. So don't burn the bread. If I ever do, because I was screwing up, I have to scrape it off, So that's the first step. I don't butter it because, I try to avoid too much butter because the peanut butter already has plenty of fat. So then on one side of the one of the breads, I spread the peanut butter. I like peanut butter that is just the peanuts. I don't like it salted. I don't like any oils added, so I want to make sure it's just the peanut butter. I don't like it too chunky, so I just kind of put that on there. The layer I put on is not super thick where it's like gooping off, but it's enough that I don't want to see bread. I don't want to see sunlight between me and the bread. And then on the other side, I spread my jam. Now, my favorite jams are these little, not little, they're tall French. You might have seen them at the store. They're kind of taller glass containers. And they're like, it's just like French such and such. And they have these delicious like Marionberry and strawberry. Oh, so good. So I think my favorite probably is Marionberry, in fact. I grab that, spread it on the other side. Again, not too much. I don't want to have it be too sweet, but definitely cover the bread. Don't add anything else, and then carefully go plonk. One side goes on top of the other. If it ever is not angled properly and they're not even, I just throw it away and spit in everyone's face and then start over. But if they're lined up properly, and then enjoy it one bite at a time, and it is glorious.
Wow, very detailed. Top fan Rebecca says, one embarrassing story you can recall about each other. So I guess this one is directed at both of us.
All right. Well, let's see. Radio-friendly embarrassing story. Anyways, I can recall the time where we were dancing at a Celtic Bayou, and then we got back to my place. It was a great day. We've talked about it before. It was the day we recorded Talk to the Girls video for our old band Missionary. We just had a great time.
Well, yeah, I had some time to think about this question, like, I don't know, a minute or so. And similar, I'm guessing, to you, so many stories. I mean, just from that one night alone, both of us could rattle off, probably like 15 different stories that are embarrassing for both of us. And to be clear, that was, 13 years ago? It was literally
13 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy. We were kids.
Yeah. So I was trying to think, okay, there's so many stories I could tell that are embarrassing for both of us and for you. And then I was thinking, okay, well, there's got to be some that are radio friendly. And
Are there?
And then I was thinking, well, there aren't really, because anything below extremely embarrassing, you kind of thrive in that space of awkwardness, like
that's true.
Like I was trying, because you don't really get embarrassed, like you'll just
stop it, you're embarrassing me.
You just bounce back up and be like, yeah, I just did that. Like you're actually, we actually have an ongoing joke where, Berto, yeah, like, do you remember the background of that joke?
I mean, weren't we at like a dinner or something, and we were saying like, maybe I was under the table, and then I'd pop my head up, and you'd be like, Berto, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, we were making a joke, or I don't know who was saying it, but you and I were joking around about some guy going down on another guy.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't a homophobic joke. It was more,
no.
It was some kind of like just sexual, it was just like a sexual joke.
Yeah.
And then we were just talking about a generic guy going down on someone else or something.
Right.
And then you like inserted.
I go down on you, and then
you inserted yourself into the joke, and it was like, why would you put you wanted to make fun of yourself, and then you and I immediately like got that meta joke, and we're like,
yeah.
Isn't that hilarious? In our heads, we're like, isn't it hilarious that you just put yourself in the worst position in that scenario?
Literally.
Yeah.
So
then from then on, whenever you did something like that, which was frequently, we'd point down at our crotch and go, Berto.
Yeah. It's like the recurring inappropriate person in the cast, and like in a show or something.
Yeah, just like you throw yourself under the bus. Like, so I can't think of a single embarrassing moment that even remotely is embarrassing really to you. You know what I mean? Like you're just like, well, I don't know, that happened, and you'll be the first, and you'll be the first person to like advertise it too. You know?
I mean, I remember the polyamory one in Vancouver.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, do you want to tell that story?
That's embarrassing.
Do you want to tell that story?
Sure. I think I might have even told it before, but man, that was embarrassing. I was in Vancouver at the time, and I was in a relationship, not in Vancouver. And so, but we were out at a club, and I felt guilty about like hitting on this one girl because, you know, I was in a relationship. But in my convoluted, surely under the influence brain, I was thinking, well, but what if this person's into, you know, polyamory or something? So I'm sitting there talking. We're talking about great normal things, I'm sure. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'm like, are you into polyamory? And then that just like, you could see the face change. Like if anyone's ever watched Rick and Morty, this is the moment where Morty's lips droop down to the floor. Like, it's just like, what? Why would you ask me that? Like, what? And then that just like, of course, ruined the conversation, ruined the moment. And I was trying to explain it to my friends, and you know, all they could do is make vicious fun of me for that. Yeah, it wasn't a good pickup line for sure.
Top fan Lyndon, famous patron Lyndon says, on a scale from 1 to techie, how techie is Kirk? So what's your answer to that?
1 to techie. I want to say how techie I think you are.
I guess on a scale from 1 to techie, how techie is Kirk?
Oh, you're pretty techie for a therapist, man. But you do get frustrated with tech, and don't get me wrong, I do too. So I'd say like I know people that they don't get frustrated. They keep going and going and going, and they're just like ridiculous about it, and they build arcade machines at night. So I'd say you're probably an 8, maybe.
Yeah, there is. I don't know what it is about my traumas or something, but I can go from 0 to 10 in a burning rage. We used to call it burning rage in high school, around technology stuff. Yeah. And I always say the same phrase. Whatever year it is, I'm like, it's 20 and we still can't get, Skype to work with Windows. I mean, what the fuck, people, because there's certain things where I'm just like,
yeah, I know.
It's 2020, there are certain things where I expect things not to work. Like, I don't know, like VR is sort of new, I suppose, or connecting an Apple device to a PC device. I still kind of expect that. But if I'm in the PC anyway, I
hear you. And I have, because I'm pretty techie too, and I get the same frustrations. For example, I remember when Skype first was a thing, I was so happy because I was able to. I went down to Colombia. I bought my dad a PC. I set him up with Skype, and then from there on, we started being able to Skype. This is a long time before it was bought by Microsoft. It was working great, And I was like, oh my gosh, this is life changing. Like I can see my dad. I can talk to him. I don't have to travel every month to go to Colombia or something, But then it was acquired by Microsoft, first of all, and then they start changing stuff, and it went from like this glorious new discovery to the most frustrating experience every single time, because the UI would keep changing, and he would have a different version than me. And then I'm like, Dad, I can't see you. And he's like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, do you see the little button? It's got looks like a little rectangle with a triangle on the side. No, I don't have that button. And I'm like, I know you have that button. So then I guide him through how to take a screenshot, which is, by the way, hard enough. And then I somehow I'm like, look, send that in an email. And then that was hard. And then I finally get the stupid email, and I'm like, there's no button. Where's the button? What is this UI? Oh my God, I'm getting re-traumatized right now, man. It was not once, not twice. It was every single time till we finally found new software, and it was, and that, yeah, I kept feeling the same things as you. What year is this? What is happening? This used to work.
Yeah, Skype, they broke it in 10 different ways. And one of the ways they broke it was in addition to just bad UI and I don't know what they were thinking. I also think another problem is the developers are like, they have to justify their jobs, and so they have to change it, even though there's no point in changing it. It's kind of one of the nice things about Facebook is that it changes occasionally, which is annoying, but it doesn't change very often. I'll give it that.
I will say you're right there. They've kept it fairly consistent. In fact, the times they've made changes, it pissed everyone off, and they tried to like, I've seen this so many times though in my industry. Like, we'll come up with a new bear design, right? And it's actually good, and we test it, and like lots of users love it. So we'll hire up a whole division. Like, okay, we're just going to manufacture this one type of bear because this one's got like a little skirt. It's got the little pink Elton John glasses. It's going to be awesome. Okay. But inevitably, once we got the production ramped up and we're going, you actually don't need the full division that you initially hired because you don't need all the designers. You actually don't need, like, you've optimized your process. You don't need all the engineers, but you still have the team and you don't want to fire them. And so then you're like, well, I mean, what if we added like little glowing lights to the skirt? And then you're like, well, what if the glasses, instead of just like being glasses, like you could fold them and they turn into a hat? And then like you start changing all these things. And then pretty soon the glasses no longer stay on as glasses because now they got fully bendable parts. And then the lights catch fire. Now you got a lawsuit. Like, that's how I lost my last factory, by the way. Anyways, it's a mess. And like, if we just were happy with, okay, this is a successful product, let's redirect these people, or unfortunately, like, let's shrink a little bit and let's just keep customers happy. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that they were seemingly doing to Skype that I noticed was they were trying to turn it into like a Snapchat or something. And there were all these
effects.
Yeah, they added all these like effects and all these like weird emojis and stuff. And it wasn't just something that was extra that was sort of off to the side that I could ignore. It was something that was really quite in your face.
Yeah.
And nothing made me happier. Nothing has made me happier. Well, that's stupid, but I've been very happy that Zoom is like completely dominating the marketplace right now, as everyone is doing from home. And there's all these people talking about like, wait, what's this Zoom thing? Because I've been using Zoom for a couple of years. My university found that it was like the best platform, and so whenever there was any kind of remote anything throughout my entire university, it's always been over Zoom. And so I've been getting used to Zoom for a long time. And whenever I was doing remote podcasts, I would always do it over Zoom. It's very easy. Like I was so happy when I discovered it compared to Skype. I was just like, oh my God, you can actually record directly from Zoom. You know, like with Skype, you had to have this third party software to record, and it would crap out sometimes. I mean, there were times when I lost entire interviews because of this stuff. With Zoom, it's more stable than my recording software that I use to record our podcasts. Zoom has never crapped out on me, which is incredible. You know, that something would be that consistent, particularly because it has to convert all these files. It's, I've talked for like 3 hours sometimes and converted the file, and I'm just watching this this dial, the slider, like, so, okay, still converting. I'm just like, oh shit, this is going to be rough. And then it always works. But yeah, a lot of people right now are just like, what's this Zoom thing? Like, everyone's talking about Zoom, and I'm just like, welcome
to the world.
Welcome to 2020, people. Anyway, top fan Samantha. Oh, another question here for me is that from famous patron Lennon. On a scale from 1 to humanities and artsy, how artsy is Humberto?
Oh.
That's interesting because on one level, you're extremely creative, and even your drawings are artsy, and you appreciate art, and obviously you write music and you record, and when you see good art, you really enjoy it. But on the other hand, on another sort of different adjacent scale to artsy, or the sort of like how into the humanities and artsy are you? I would say you're not really at all. I mean, I guess there are some times when you talk about literature or some classical composer or something, but you're pretty down to earth, I would say, similar to me. Like I have almost no knowledge of, there are some people that talk about certain artists or certain authors as if all of us should know this person. And I'm always like, I have no idea. Because I grew up in a fairly, although we were middle class in a way, I also feel like my parents came from working class generations, uneducated, not very highly educated people. And although, smart and all that kind of stuff, whenever I bump into people like that, I'm like, oh, you must come from a different stock, like high class sort of conversations were probably going on while you were a kid and you overheard those things. I've never been a part of that kind of ritzy thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I agree. Look, as Jacques Foucault de Laplace always liked to say in his poems, no, just kidding. No, look, I grew up with a medical doctor in the house, and so conversations were about science. They were about the brain. They were about, and encouraging me to do math. And it was about how much disdain my dad had gained for classical music when he used to love it, and about that was it, right? And and he did talk about Russian authors. I guess he'd read a couple Russian authors. But yeah, my dad was not very humanities inclined. And my grandparents, they were, like you said, working class. And my grandpa, by the way, off the charts smart, but not like read, I don't know that he went to university. I have no idea. But he was so smart, and he was an inventor. It was crazy. But yeah, I didn't grow up with those conversations or those, books, like the library of books. The library of books was in my dad's room, and it was all medical books. Hence why I remember these titles that you sometimes, parade out. I'm like, oh, I remember that title.
So your grandpa was an inventor?
Yeah, so my grandpa worked in a few jobs. His last long job was he was a safety inspector at a shoe company in Colombia. I know that sounds made up, but it was real. It was the the biggest shoe company in Colombia. But the thing is, he at home had this workshop full of all these electronic things and stuff, and he would make all these gadgets, and he would create ways to do this. He basically built his house, he hired construction workers and stuff, but he designed it, and he figured out, it was made to the way he wanted to make it and stuff. He was a very accomplished person in that sense, and very, very smart. Just not, he was lower middle class, which for Colombia was not well off.
So do you feel like you took after him and less so of your parents?
No, because yes, and my dad had a certain kind of intelligence, right? He had some difficulties learning. He had you're an ideas guy. You're an idea. Oh, I see what you're saying. I see. Yes. That must be it. You're right. Absolutely, because that's not my dad, and not really my mom either. So I think you're right.
Yeah, I kind of enjoy thinking about that in terms of how we take after our grandparents. I'm often compared to my Japanese grandma because she was a singer, and that's what, if you didn't know her well, that's all you probably knew about her, was that she was a singer at her church. She would do solos from her teenage years all the way up until she died at the age of 101. So, wow. And in I guess it would have been like the 30s and 40s, she was well known throughout Spokane, Washington, as, perhaps the most beautiful Japanese singer. I'm kind of bummed out because by the time I heard her sing, she was pretty elderly and was losing her hearing, and her voice wasn't what it used to be. And there's no recordings of that early time. And so I feel like I didn't really ever get to hear it, which is but there's people in my family are musical, but not the way that, say, you and I are, and not the. So often I think about my grandmother as
interesting,
the sort of musical genes or something that got into my bones, you know. Anyway, top fan Samantha writes, favorite country you visited. What's your favorite country that you visited, Berto?
Well, unfortunately, I think you've visited a lot more countries than I have, so it's not like I have this huge repertoire and I'm going to select among them. So the countries I've visited include Colombia, the United States, Canada, England, Stockholm, Sweden.
Mexico. Got to be Mexico.
Oh, and Mexico. And that might be it.
You haven't been to countries around Colombia?
No, not really.
Huh.
No. I landed in Panama once. And I landed in Iceland once. So no, I mean, I don't want to call it sad because for some people, these things are important. For me, that's not something I prioritize. So it's not like I'm like, oh, if I only could have traveled. I have other goals. But at the same time, you know, I would like to say I've visited a few more places. But of the places I've visited, and I'm just going to say, like, I'm just going to discount Colombia and the United States just because that's where I've lived. So that narrows it down to Canada, England, and Mexico. So I'd say England. England was because I have so many amazing memories from my trips to England, both when I went to Liverpool and I saw the Beatles places, and that was so amazing. That was such an experience. And I could do a whole episode on that experience. I've written a song about that experience. And then there was this other trip where I went and I chaperoned a whole bunch of kids through like various places in England. And that was amazing because prior to that trip, that was like in 2008. So 12 years ago. Crazy. In that trip, I didn't want to go on that trip, frankly. I had signed up for it a year in advance. And then when it was approaching, I was like, oh man, I don't want to do this. Going to England. I've been to England, because I'd been there for work or whatever. But and I'm like, we're gonna go see a bunch of tutti frutti museums, and I gotta like pay attention to all these kids. Ugh, who needs it? Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah,
but,
I agree. Yeah. Me and Stacy did a trip to Paris and London. We took the Channel, and I was really looking forward to Paris and France, and did all my pre-planning and pre-booking of things for Paris, the catacombs, Notre Dame, all the museums, the Louvre, the Sacred Heart Hill, the Moulin Rouge, the restaurants, the Arch. There's just so many things that are iconic, and the history, and what's Marseille? Is it called the
Marseille,
palace?
Yeah. Oh, Versailles.
Yeah.
Versailles. That's.
And there were all these things that I couldn't do. I wanted to go to Bordeaux. I wanted to go to all these other places outside. We didn't have time. And it was really great. Paris is amazing, and the history and all the things that we saw. I really loved Notre Dame, actually, and just walking around the town, the bridges, the bridge where you put the little lock on for you and your loved one, you and your significant other, and you throw the keys.
Yeah.
And everything. I really loved it. Of course, Eiffel Tower, blah blah blah. And then I kind of neglected the whole London thing because I'm like, London, I don't know. It's just
who needs it?
Yeah, it's not. There's not a lot of love stories about London. It's all about Paris. We always had Paris. It's not like we always had London. But I did a little bit of research because of the Beatles stuff, and there are those little like where Paul wrote Yesterday. And that kind of thing. But I was like, I sort of have a bad taste in my mouth about the Royals. It's like, why do we still have that stupid thing? And this is before watching The Crown, the TV show, which kind of made me appreciate the Royals a little bit more. Not entirely, but at least interested in the story. But anyway, we go to London, and it was just amazing. I mean, every street in this zone has history, has something interesting, and the food and the people and the liveliness and the energy, I don't know, there were just so many amazing moments in London. Even going to Buckingham Palace, which I resisted, and Stacy was like, well, come on, let's go. And I was like, oh, okay, this seems like a massive tourist trap. What do I care about some rich person's, mansion and walking through with like 1,000 other people? But I actually really enjoyed going to Buckingham Palace, particularly later when I started watching The Crown and going like, I've been there, I was there, and it, there's just going to Freud's ashes was just this amazing experience. I mean, mostly because the groundskeeper guy who had the key and let us into the the mausoleum where all the ashes are, he had to let us in, and he had written all these poems about Freud and made us both cry as he was talking about, death and grief and just all these different stories, and visiting the T-Rex guy's grave, because apparently it was just like his birthday or something. There was all these flowers around him. Mark, I can't remember his name. We have a fan. We have a listener who's like really into him. That is going to kill.
Is he the guy who discovered T-Rexes or something?
The band T-Rex,
Oh, okay.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah. I thought you were asking.
I thought it was like the archaeologist that first discovered T-Rexes.
Yeah. I actually went on a little bit of a T-Rex rabbit hole last night on YouTube.
Really?
He has a really cool style of recording. Like the songs are extremely simple and almost like copying a lot of older styles of music.
I have a question. Isn't T-Rex that song? Hey kids, rock and roll.
No.
No? Who's that?
That is a terrible song. By I don't know, but it's an artist that actually had better songs than that. We won't go down that rabbit hole anyway. Bang a gong, da da da, get it on. The original was by T-Rex.
Okay.
But there's other songs that you would probably recognize by T-Rex. Anyway, I should just look it up. T-Rex. I mean, this is a weird episode, so no, T-Rex. T-Rex the band, not the fucking dinosaur. Come on, people. Mark Bolan. Yeah, Mark Bolan. He's sort of like David Bowie's precursor in a lot of ways. And he died early, and tragically.
I'm really uneducated on T-Rex. I don't know why. I know a couple of the songs because I remember hearing them and saying, "Oh, I know that song." But I had the same thing with England and with London, where when we finally got there, and I had no choice because since it was a chaperone tour, like the things were pre-booked and I wasn't the organizer, so like I was going to be dragged around to these places. But then two things happened actually. Prior to that trip, I had started reading more history. I got kind of interested. And I was reading Isaac Asimov's History of the World, which is like this huge volume where he goes from 13 billion years ago and in logarithmic increments goes through the history of the known history of the world. And I was already at the 1700s or something when I took the trip. So that kind of actually had made me really kind of more curious about history. And I get there and we start going to these places, and like when we went to the Tower of London, and I realized this place is like 1,000 years old. It's 1,000 years old. Like that was like the oldest thing I'd ever experienced. Like I'd never been in a place that was that old. I mean, other than nature itself, right? But like a human built thing that was that old.
Yeah, and as a history nerd for myself, like that sort of stuff just cranks my chain. Like there are so many stories that we know about that we have written accounts about from 1,000 years ago that happened at the Tower of London, and then of course going back even further to Vikings invading up the river up to both Paris and I think to London. Anyway,
we also got to go to Shakespeare, to Stratford upon Avon, or however you say it.
Yeah.
Where Shakespeare was, and we got to see a play there at a theater there. It was a Shakespeare play, obviously. I think it was Taming of the Shrew, maybe, or something. But dude, keep in mind this was with a set of high schoolers and junior hires. I think the lowest ones were in maybe 8th grade all the way to seniors. And we're sitting there, and there's a scene with full-on male frontal nudity where this guy comes out with like no pants. It's like he's the lead actor. And I'm like looking around, I'm like, oh my gosh, did parents sign waivers for this? And like afterwards, like it was, of course, all the kids were like, it was so embarrassing.
God. All right, let's take a break. When we get back, let's continue replying to these questions from people on Facebook. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, people. So, Humberto, if Shakespeare was to write a play that would have a character that would be convincing the listeners who are listening right now, who are not yet patrons, to become patrons, what would that sound like?
Oh, if Shakespeare were to write a play?
Yeah.
Okay. How dost thou this morning look upon the yonder sunlight of the pot and hear thy words? Why are words? These are not the things I should be doing. Why are these words from these peasant people in the roses that smell sweeter? You should contribute, for if thou doesn't, thou risks going to thine grave and never coming yonder.
Beautiful. All right. John on Facebook says, after 9/11, there was an increase in compassion, consideration, national pride, togetherness, and empathy. Those feelings started to taper off after a week, and most of the changes, I feel, were temporary, not counting the TSA, of course. With this being an extended crisis with the coronavirus, do you think there will be a lasting change? Berto, what do you think?
I do believe there will be some changes. Some things that, for example, I'm realizing that I think maybe more people will realize is, and granted, I'm speaking from a position of extreme privilege. So, grain of salt. I'm realizing that, man, I can do stuff at home and be okay. Like, for example, I can eat at home and I don't have to go out all the time. I realize that's not great for restaurants, but on the other hand, it's been very good for my health. I'm eating better. Sorry. And then also just like I'm getting to sort of enjoy my house a little bit and, try to clean up a couple things. And so that's good too. I don't know if that's going to be universal, but I feel like I'm connecting more with where I live. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is I'm spending more time outside my house, which is funny to say, but like, trying to like get outdoor time. And that's also interesting because I usually just, don't just take my outside for granted. And as a result, seeing my neighbors who are also grounded, but so we don't go in each other's houses, but we do spend some social time outside, which is nice. I feel like that'll be a lasting change, is that relationship with our neighbors, because we've lived through COVID-19. I fear that there will also be some negative long-term changes because, at least in this country, what's happening is the way that the government's bailing stuff out, it's not just for people. There's a lot of big companies getting bailouts that maybe some of it didn't have anything to do with this, and so I think that there's going to be a lasting repercussion where our deficit is ballooning even more and all these things. So I think people are going to be very concerned about money and about the economy for a while. Even after this thing ends, I don't think it's going to be the magical rebound we are all hoping for. Other than that, I hope that there will be a lasting effect on how we handle pandemics, because this thing of like, I think a lot of us did this thing of throughout not just this time, but every time there's some news in Asia or something like, oh, a whole bunch of people are dying because of some chickens or something. It always feels very remote. Like, yeah, that sucks. But luckily that's not us. And this time is a reminder of like, yeah, all it takes is a couple flights and then it is you. And then it's just as much you as it was those countries. So I'm hoping that is a change that happens. Lastly, man, huge positive impact to the environment for a couple months. Could there be some lasting impact? I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, I'm hoping that there is, in fact, literally a little bit of a reprieve towards trees and the environment just from those 2 months, and maybe that can just do a little bit of an inch of difference. But other than that, I'm wondering, are people going to look at this and be like, well, should we wait for the absolute catastrophe moment, or should we actually start changing just a little bit of our daily patterns, like not driving as much, staying at home a little bit more? I don't know. Maybe that's just me being naive and optimistic, but...
Yeah, I agree with the predictions that you're making. Aside from that last one, I have no faith in humanity and our politicians that in, say, 3 years, there's going to be enough of a change in people's lifestyles and emphasis on pollution and CO2 that will make any difference. I gave up a long time ago. Now I hope that that's not true, but I gave up. You know, we've already seen massive changes in the climate, and because 30 years ago it was still mostly an unseen prediction that was going to happen. The glaciers are melting. Greenland is melting. Species are dying. Whole coral reefs are dying. The average global temperature is obviously going up, and we're doing nothing. We're doing nothing. In fact, we're doing worse. We're pumping more CO2 as a species, particularly when you add up everyone around the world. So, but all the other predictions, make sense to me. The only thing I'll add to that is that, and I feel this for myself, that this massive change in my attitude about working from home with the university, and the massive change in my attitude about using Zoom to do therapy or teach a class. I used to hate doing this sort of stuff, and if you would have asked me, I'd be like, nope, I'm too old for this or something. I'll never adjust to teaching classes over Zoom. I'll never adjust to therapy over Zoom, and I have gotten used to it, and to the point where I had this thought last night of just like, because I have this sort of brainstorm future where Stacy and I just travel by motorhome or something around Canada, around North America and Mexico, and maybe even go into South America, and just do the podcast remotely as long as I have an internet connection. And then I could also teach my classes remotely. I could also see my clients remotely. I wouldn't have to change any, because right now it's like I'm stuck at home. I'm doing everything remotely. Well, right. I could take that on the road if I had a good enough internet connection, a good enough rig in my setup so that I could stay connected to the internet. Right. And so it just opens up this whole new thing, because I always thought, well, if we ever did that, I'd have to quit the university, I'd have to close down my practice, and I'm like, well, actually, I wouldn't have to do any of those things. So I think that for a lot of people, businesses, they're going to be like, well, if we're going to survive the next one that this happens, we have to start setting up people to work from home. It'll be an economic necessity that I think a lot of companies will realize, that a lot of companies have realized, but some companies really did not. Like a lot of the mental health agencies, actually, because I know a lot of you listening have emailed me about this, they resisted and are continuing to resist allowing telehealth to happen. Whereas, so some agencies are moving to telehealth, and they're just like, yeah, go home, see your clients over Zoom or over the phone. And then some mental health agencies are like, no, because we can't bill for that, and we don't have HIPAA compliant video conferencing, or we don't like that. We don't want to lose. If we send everyone home, this agency will be out of business in 3 months because agencies are usually just scraping by anyway. And so it's forced the government and all these mental health agencies to iron out the legal and ethical and procedural things that need to be in place for people to work from home. Otherwise, all these people would go without services, right? So I think that there's going to be a real shift, and I think that that's a great thing. It's great for the environment. It's great for just mental health. Like for me, when I go to my university and I have to be there for a long period of time, it stresses me out. There's just something about being around a bunch of strangers, having to deal with sort of the minutia of business that can be good and bad at times. The stress of the commute, of parking, of eating out downtown, which can sometimes be a kind of a crapshoot. It's just so much more relaxing to be at home, and to stay in. I had this thought the other day. I thought, if I was a Twitter person, this would be something I would tweet. And then I thought, I bet you someone else has actually said this and they would think I ripped it off. But this did genuinely just pop into my head. I thought about tweeting, which I don't tweet, so I don't know, would be, I can't tell if I'm working in my pajamas or I'm sleeping in my work clothes.
I love it, man. I'm going to steal it and post it, and then I'm going to get all this adulation. It's going to actually get on all the talk shows as like, this was the best tweet of the year. And then I'll be interviewed by all of them, and I'll be in my pajamas, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, it's like meta. You are a genius jokester.
Because I'm literally talking to you right now in the same outfit I wore while I was sleeping earlier,
Yeah, I'm naked.
Because, I wear, but I guess I sleep in sort of fancy sweats. And I work in, fancy enough clothes that I can, anyway. The other thing I think that will happen long term, to answer John's question, is a little bit more compassion for immune compromised people. There have always been, there's two groups of people that have always been experiencing this. One is immune compromised people, or people who have immune compromised people in their family. They've been, doing everything that we're doing right now, since they've known about their diagnosis. The other people are people who have obsessive compulsive tendencies or full-on phobias around germs, which I think you are in at least in that category.
Yeah.
And I think there'll be more compassion or more awareness. Now, after 9/11, just off the top of my head, I don't know if this is true, but I think there were two effects that happened for people from the Middle East, or people who are perceived to be from the Middle East, people who might have been Muslim or were perceived to be from a Muslim area, or were Muslim. That before 9/11, it wasn't, there was racism and xenophobia, but after 9/11, there was an increase in xenophobia and racism against those groups of people. But there was also a movement to be more compassionate towards them. So there's just more awareness about those groups of people, and you had some people being more harmful to them, and then also some people actually being more caring and more reaching out to them. And as a result, I think we have, to date, seen, like, we actually have someone who would be perceived as from one of those groups as one of our representatives, right? I can't remember her name. What's her name? Do you know her name?
Here in Washington, you mean?
In Seattle. She's one of our...
Yeah, in Seattle. Yeah. Which the
Jayapal,
libertarians and the right wing hate her.
Yeah, is Jayapal, is that her name? Anyway.
I think that's right. I don't know how to say it, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I forget, what her lineage is, but at least she's perceived as being, one of those Muslims who's trying to take over, the blah, blah, blah. And we're seeing more Muslims in TV shows and this sort of thing, more representation. And I wonder if 9/11 hadn't happened, if we would have seen that. So I think in the future, there will be perhaps just more awareness and maybe more compassion towards people with immune compromised conditions. I also agree that I guess this is just an optimistic point of view, that there will be more money and attention given to prevention efforts and setting up, hospitals to have more beds, more ventilators, this kind of thing. I mean, primarily because all the experts are like, look, the coronavirus isn't going away. Even if we flatten the curve, it'll come back next fall. And if it's anything like the 1918 flu pandemic, it'll kill 10 times more people because people will be relaxed next fall. They'll be like, we survived it last time, we'll survive it again. And then it'll kill like a whole bunch of people. And, even if we do manage to get a vaccine, the experts are saying by the time they can actually vaccinate the populace and get a herd immunity, it's going to be like 2 or 3 years, maybe 3 years from now. So we've got 3 years of what we're going through right now, if not 100 times worse. So at least in the short term, politicians are not going to be elected if they don't get on board with allocating funds towards these prevention efforts and also beefing up our medical abilities to respond. I mean, it's just embarrassing to live in a country that is the most advanced, the most rich, by far, by the way, of any civilization that has ever been on this planet, and we're scraping for testing, and we're just falling over ourselves.
Yeah.
It's just embarrassing. The visual I have in my mind is, if our country was like a police officer, a robber comes out of a bank with a bag of money and a gun and starts shooting people, and the police officer has like all this accoutrement on their body, and they can't get and they don't have a gun. The gun's like in their car around the corner, and it only has like 2 bullets in it that may or may not even work. It's just
oh God.
It's like, you've laden yourself with all this bullshit, and why don't you have a working gun at your side when you need it? Like, okay, sure, it's not frequent that you need the gun. You might not have needed it in your entire career, but it's not inconceivable to imagine that as a police officer, you might need a fucking gun. Well, we've all known that this could happen. It's not frequent, but we've all known. And look at us. We're just so stupid. I just feel like it's just embarrassing on a certain level. Anyway.
Dude, also, it's 2020. Can you tell me, honestly, that in 1985, you didn't take it for granted that by 2020 we would have freaking cured the colds? Like, why are we still breathing through our freaking lungs at this point,
Yeah, we should be energy beings by this point, man. Top Fandarian says, what are y'all eating? And how often are you eating? I only ask because it's like my binge eating disorder, and a lot of other people's has been like super exacerbated by this whole situation. So what are you eating, and how often are you eating, Berto?
That's interesting. I didn't consider that for many people this could actually be bad in the other direction. That's because I guess I'm too narcissistic, so I assume everyone's like me or something. Yeah, I have actually been, and I'll say this, I think traditionally, whenever I eat at home, even when I was not eating great food when I was younger, I just still eat better at home. Maybe it's because, I grew up in households that had good home cooking and it wasn't constant snacking and stuff like that. But anyways, I have been eating pretty well. So I bought a whole bunch of purple sweet potatoes ahead of this. And luckily they're still, as of last week, they were still delivering them. So I was able to replenish. I love purple sweet potatoes. They're my favorite thing, actually, I think. I discovered them a few years back when I was doing nutritional research, and they're this food that the Okinawan population ate for a long, long time. It's super rich in antioxidants and fiber and protein and minerals and everything. Okay, so I cook those. I bake them for 45 minutes at 350 degrees. And And it was very important. I first rinse them off lightly and then only lightly dry it off so that it still has like a little bacteria on the skin. And then I cook them. And then after I cook them, I eat a little bit of the skin, but not too much. And then I grab the rest of the inside and I mix it with avocado, flax seeds, a little bit of apple cider vinegar or lemon, depending on my mood. I add a little bit of garlic sauce, which is garlic, olive oil, salt, and pepper. Not too much. And then I crush it all together. Crush into this mush. And it's like this nice, vivid purple. Oh, actually it becomes magenta with the acid from the lemon or the apple cider vinegar. And it's just like mush. Oh, delicious. And then I grab a nori seaweed sheet and I spread out like a row of this deliciousness. And then I put a little bit of pickled ginger and a little bit of sauerkraut, like in this case, beet sauerkraut on it. And then I roll up that roll. Oh my gosh, I'm salivating right now. And then and it's crunchy and the inside is delicious and sweet and tangy. Oh.
Wow. That sounds amazing.
So that's what I do for breakfast, right? And then my lunches, oh my gosh. Okay, so one thing is that I love rice dishes. That's like, growing up, that were some of my favorite foods. Like my grandma makes this, which I think you had, this coconut raisin rice. It's so good. Okay. But so what I'll do is I'll grab some white rice and I'll grab chickpeas or lentils. But I tend to, green beans. But I tend to prefer the chickpeas or the lentils because they actually work better with the flavors. I'll lightly spray some coconut oil on the pan, just light, and then I'll add some vinegar, maybe some white wine vinegar, and then I'll just add some onions. So good. And then I'll add the rice and the lentils or the garbanzo, and I'll start stirring it around. I'll add a little bit of turmeric with pepper, and then I'm salivating, and then some raisins. And I'll add all sorts of other things like little spices like rosemary and this kind of stuff and things like that. I'll add a little bit of spicy sauce, although I've had to eat a little less spicy recently because my tummy gets irritated, which sucks. I'm so angry about it. But anyways, and then I was just like, shh. And then I'll like spray a little lemon as it's cooking. And then that forms this delicious rice thing and then I might put a little bit of coconut flakes on it too. Maybe some nuts like pecans or things like that. And when it's all done, take it out of there. I maybe add a little bit of garlic sauce on top and just eat that, and it's delicious.
Wow, it sounds amazing. Top fan Serenity says, how are you dealing with the lockdown? Any tips for people going crazy due to the lack of in-person human contact?
Right. Well, I mean, I do have in-person contact. As I mentioned, I'm socializing with my neighbors. And I am trying to stay very connected via video calls, podcast calls, and my work is constant video calls. So if anything, I have too much human contact. I need to have less human contact. And I gotta say, if I thought like because of this, my work would reduce a bit because you can't be like manning the factory floor of teddy bears if you're working from home. Nope. Turns out that we're having constant meetings. Oh, and that's the other thing. So here's my gripes of wrath. Normally when you have meetings, like there is this natural buffer between meetings because you have to you can't go over because people start knocking on your door if your meeting's running over. So the meeting will end. Second, you have to walk to the next meeting even if they're back to back. So you get a little bit of you move your legs, you get to go from one place to the other. Third, people try not to book back-to-back meetings as much because it's just not possible. Fourth, your calendar has difficulties and the rooms are not usually available, so everyone doesn't book as many meetings. But now, everyone's like, oh yeah, book meeting, back to back, no walking in between, meetings run over because no one's knocking at the door. So I actually end up so much more exhausted from this, and I'm like, I don't want to see people.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's this knowledge that everyone has of just like, well, we know where you are. You're stuck at home and you're not doing anything,
Right.
and it's 9 to 5. So it's the work day. So we can look at your schedule and we know exactly where you are and we know that you're free. Before you could say like, oh, I got this thing, or I have a dentist appointment, or I've got to run an errand or something. Well, that's not likely to happen. And so I've been noticing the same thing, and we don't have the normal ability to come up with excuses to get out of meetings like, that you don't want to. But I'm sure we'll be able to figure that out. The ingenuity of the labor force will hopefully figure out a new way to avoid superfluous, stupid meetings that upper administration continues to, oppress the masses with.
Like, can I take a sick day right now? What is a sick day?
Yeah, exactly. Top Fan Ed, we all know Top Fan Ed, he says, Woo! I'm wondering if you guys have any go-to activities that reliably make you feel better during this weird time. Berto, what do you think?
Yes, I actually do, but okay, so this one comes with a caveat. I recently realized that I should stop doing this activity because I thought it was actually helping me, but I think it's hurting me. And it's masturbation. No, just kidding. That's not it. No, I have this game on my phone that is a stupid, mindless zombie game where these zombies keep coming. And I kid you not, Kirk, I installed it because it looked from the pictures like a tower defense game, and I love tower defense games. But all it is one little corridor. The scenery never changes. There's never levels. Like, it's always the same corridor, just the length of the screen. And zombies keep coming from the top. Always the same kind of zombies. There's not different kinds. And you have 5 slots, and you just have to keep upgrading those slots because the zombies get more, like, harder to kill. And so you need to upgrade your slots. And it's the most mindless thing because all you're doing is just waiting to get enough money to upgrade your slots so you can get more money to upgrade your slots so you can get more money. And that's all that happens. And it's so stupid. But the reason I'm saying this is because I was playing it as a way to like not think. And I was kind of enjoying that. But then I started getting addicted to it. Oh, and then here's the other problem. It's one of those games where you have to watch commercials for other games to get like the next things. It's so stupid. So like in order for me to get enough money to get the upgrades, I need to sit there and watch a 30-second ad for another game that I have no interest in playing because it's the same kind of vicious, abusive game, and I don't want any more of this. So I finally realized last night, I'm like, okay, I gotta stop. I'm gonna uninstall this bullshit. I'm addicted to it. It's brain dead, and I thought that was good right now, but it's soaking, or it's sapping my soul.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can see that though. I mean, there are games that I have played. I mean, they're less mindless, but I get the mindlessness satisfaction that we get. I was playing Settlers of Catan on my phone for a few years, and after a while, that game gets pretty predictable, and yet I would just play that over and over and over and over and over again.
But there's some strategy to that. I mean, you're right. Yeah. I guess if you play it enough, but like at least it's a well-developed game and stuff. But imagine if you had a thing where it's like you have to press a button on the phone screen over and over and over, and what you get from pressing the button is the ability to press the button more.
But I get that. I can't relate because I'm more sophisticated than you are, of course. but I get it because you're doing it because you must need to do it.
Yeah.
And you're judging yourself because it doesn't hold up to a cultural rubric, and you must need to do it. Like it must be. It must offset something. And I could imagine, knowing your personality, your brain is working 1,000 miles per hour, and your brain needs to take a break for a little bit, and it needs something so mind-numbingly repetitive and predictable and without any strategy to sort of offset that. I could see that. Top Fan Colin, of course, we know Calling In with Colin. He asks, compare yourselves to classic dynamic duos of any medium. So, and who is what he's asking. So who do you think you and I are compared, when we analogize ourselves to other dynamic duos?
First of all, hi, Colin. Yeah. This is fun. So first of all, Batman and Robin comes to mind. You're Batman. I am Catwoman. I think, stuff like Abbott and Costello. Oh, no, actually, I never watched that one. But the Odd Couple. And you're Jack Lemmon, and I am, what's the other dude?
Oh, God.
Martin, or what's his name?
Yeah, the other guy.
Yeah, the other guy. The messy guy.
Yeah.
You've got your apron. You're trying to clean around me, and I'm like, sorry, dude, I just spilled some beer. And so that's one. And then maybe if we thought of like Tom and Jerry. No, that's too difficult because we're not really chasing each other. We're not thwarting each other. Like Spy versus Spy is antagonist. They have to be things that are not antagonists.
Right.
So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, Hall and Oates.
Oh yes, good one.
I guess I would be Oates because Oates was more the songwriter and was less flashy than Hall.
Wait, which one is the one with the big bushy black hair?
That's Oates.
You're Oates? You think you're Oates?
Well, he's the more. I'm not Hall. I don't. But
you look like Hall. I look like Oates.
And I can't believe you don't know who John Oates and Daryl Hall are, man. Like
I know their songs,
God,
and I know what they look like, but I don't know which one's which.
They're one of those bands that I know a lot about and grew up with, and listened to the albums. My whole family did. Like we would, as the albums would come out, we would listen to them. Bert and Ernie, I think.
Totally.
Yeah, although
except my eyebrows look more like Bert's eyebrows.
Yeah, I mean you're definitely the Ernie, but I don't know. I don't feel like I'm the Bert.
You're not really a Bert. Simon and Garfunkel is another interesting one because on the one hand, I think of you more like as a Paul Simon in terms of the writing and stuff, but at the same time, your voice is more like Garfunkel's. It's kind of like we're a weird mix.
Yeah, Beavis and Butthead. I did a Beavis and Butthead jaunt on YouTube last night because Robot Chicken is often recommended to me, and they did Beavis and Butthead like Robot Chicken. If you don't know Robot Chicken, it's a Comedy Central thing, Adult Swim, where it's claymation essentially, stop motion, and they make fun of things, and they're making fun of Beavis and Butthead, and in the skit it's them older, so they're adults, and so
I remember that one.
Beavis is like an attorney or something, and he has a regular job, and Butthead is still Butthead, and Butthead comes over for dinner, kind of invites himself in, and somehow changes Beavis back into the original Beavis. But anyway.
Which is funny because I was going to say I was thinking you were Butthead, I was Beavis. But then maybe it's reversed in that skit.
And that's Patty asks, favorite electric kitchen device? Favorite electric kitchen device? What's your favorite?
For me, hands down the blender, because I use it to make my little special shakes all the time. I have a video on YouTube detailing my shake concoctions. I really rely on it. And I have a very, very good blender that it took me a long time to land on. I went through a lot of blenders,
Yeah, for me, I would say my musubi mold, if anyone knows what that is. Anyway, Nancy asks us to sing happy songs, but let's kind of hold off on that maybe to the end. Jessamy says, what do you two normally eat for breakfast? What do you eat for breakfast, Berto? Did you already describe it? That potato thing?
For breakfast or during this time? Because I talked about the sweet potatoes, but that's not all I eat for breakfast.
Well, give us another thing you eat for breakfast.
All right. Well, I'll talk about the Colombian breakfast. And granted, right now the Colombian breakfast goes against my mostly veganism, but I'll just describe it because I grew up with it. And okay. So, at my grandma Liti's house, and she's from the coast of Colombia, the breakfasts are very cheesy and very cornmeal based. So that means that there's usually some contraption, something made out of cornmeal and cheese. the most common ones are these things called arepas. So she grabs the mass of the cornmeal with a little water, and she adds this special kind of cheese called queso costeño, which is cheese from the coast. And it's this salty, spongy, kind of semi-hard cheese that I haven't found it anywhere else. The closest is there's this cotija or cojita cheese from Mexico. I forget which one it is. Anyways, the cheese adds this saltiness and deliciousness to it. And then she also adds sometimes a couple other kinds of cheese, but usually it's just that one. And then she masses it all together, and then she puts it with butter to on the skillet to not fry, to sear or whatever it's called, both sides, and they get like a little bit of that golden brown, and the cheese melts, and then you get two of these guys. They're about the size of a coaster, you know, and then eggs, scrambled eggs, but first very, very finely chopped green onions, and then finely chopped tomatoes, and then stir fried with the oil, and then the eggs are beaten like a couple eggs in scrambled eggs, and then that gets poured in, and then that comes out, and they're called huevos pericos. Perico, I don't know why it's called perico. Perico is a type of like a parrot, but whatever. And so you have that. You have the arepas and the huevos pericos, and then you'll have a juice, like a freshly made juice from a fruit, like moras, which are kind of like blackberries, or lulo, which is a very citrusy fruit. And then you might also have a little bread to go with it. So that's so good.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I ate at your grandma Liti's house frequently when we were down there, and I can attest to just how tasty and how sort of interesting the dishes were. They were simultaneously light but very filling. Yeah. They were beautifully presented on these platters. Yeah. And you just felt like you were in a restaurant because there's this giant kitchen, and then there's this nice, what do you call it? Decorated dining room with this big family-style table, and then everyone's talking, and it's like just a regular brunch or lunch will be like 7 courses, and meanwhile your grandfather is he can't speak any English, and I can't speak any Spanish, and the whole time he's just like doing all these hand signals to me to like make me feel welcome and make me feel like he really likes me, and yeah, I'll never forget that.
He keeps repeating, aquí estás en tu casa. Here you are in your house.
Yeah, and then you would laugh and like translate it for me. For me, breakfast, I'm such a weird eater that it's always different. But I did for a while before the quarantine get into a routine of eating not breakfast, but at least my first meal, which was usually in the afternoon, honestly, was this Central Market is this, it's kind of like Whole Foods, but better in near my house. And they have a great pizza counter. And so I'd get a giant piece of chicken kind of ranch pizza, I guess it would be. Whoa. And then a giant kale salad. And the kind of kale salad that isn't super tough. It actually is more like lettuce, because some kale is like, it's like leather, you know.
Yeah.
But this kale salad had like feta and little bits of apple. It makes my mouth water just thinking about it. And I felt so healthy while I was eating this gigantic piece of pizza. But in my head, I'm like, well, it's only one piece of pizza, but it was like the size of like 4 pieces of pizza, you know. Anyway, but I ate that probably, 6 out of 7 days a week. Top fan Charles says, what are you going to do your next deep dive on? Well, that's a good question. I guess that's really for me. I don't know. I have a lot of things I want to do on. And with the stay-at-home stuff, I at least have aspirations that I will have the time to actually really do some more deep dives. So hopefully. I want to do another deep dive on Borderline. I did one a long time, like years and years ago, but I kind of want to revisit that, and because I've furthered my understanding of Borderline and personality. I want to do.
What about some of her other songs, though?
Yeah, I want to do interpersonal therapy. I want to do other personality disorders. I want to do a deep dive on all the personality disorders. So I don't know. We'll see. Adrian says, your go-to character in Smash Brothers.
Well, I don't play enough of Super Smash Brothers or Smash Brothers or the Switch Smash Brothers. So I don't have a go-to character, but when I do play, so I guess I do have one because I usually tend to go with Link if he's available in whatever version I'm playing, just because Zelda is such a favorite of mine. Yeah.
I've literally never played that game, which is strange because, I've probably played every game or most of the popular games at least once,
Yeah.
But for whatever reason in my circle, there's not a lot of Nintendos happening. I mean, I had a Nintendo DS for a while that I really liked and played incessantly. There was this one game, it was a strategy game that I played for like 5 years straight, like whenever I could. But I've never...
I think I know which one that was.
It was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was...
A friend of mine played that too.
You would take over cities, and then those cities would produce things like tanks or, infantry, and then... and there were these characters that had, these heroes that had like bonuses. Anyway, top fan Rachel asks, any recent gripes? Do you have any additional gripes, Bert?
Any additional gripes? I already had a few gripes today. No, dude. I mean, okay. On a serious gripe topic, I've had so many moments of true ire by the callousness of the words of the dude that's in charge right now. I can't gripe enough about it. Just the callousness. It's just, Okay. That aside, the other gripe I have is, okay, so we're trying to keep social distancing and we're all doing our part. Great. Now we still have to have deliveries. Well, I guess we don't have to if we had all stocked up enough and stuff like that. But I still need a few deliveries. Now, usually they come, they leave them at the door, and I let them sit out there for a bit. And sometimes I go outside through the garage, I take them to the garage, and I leave them overnight or whatever if they don't have perishables. This one delivery comes, and they needed to see an ID because it included alcohol. Now, why am I getting a delivery of alcohol? That's a good question. Fair enough, fair point, but still. Now, in this is a good example where I was able to go out, just show my ID at a distance, not interact with the person too closely, and then they left it there, and then I went back inside and I still let it sit. But this other one, they arrive, they need to see the ID, and I show the ID, and not good enough, and the lady grabs it from my hand. She's not wearing gloves. I'm not wearing gloves. We're really close. Now our hands are and her hands are coming in contact with my ID. Now she's holding my ID, taking a photo of it, then handing it back to me. And now I'm like a deer in the headlights. I'm holding my ID. I'm like, thanks, bye. And I close the door, and I'm like, it's radioactive. Holy shit, I can see the viruses on the surface of this thing. I'm turning into Howard Hughes then. And then I go to the kitchen, I grab one of the Lysol wipes, and I'm like wiping the thing, and I'm washing my hands, and I'm trying not to breathe in this whole time. I realize I'm freaking out a little bit here, but I'm thinking, why can't you just look at the ID? Like I look like an adult, dude. I got gray hair. Come on, just give me the damn thing. Anyways.
Yeah, that would upset me too. And my wife would go bonkers over that. Like she would have just been like, but I would have been up there too. That's for sure. The three of us are definitely simpatico with that one. All right, Nancy wanted us to sing a song. Let's sing Across the Universe. Can you pull up the lyrics so you don't forget the lyrics?
Oh yeah. Okay, good point. Lyrics are always a good. By the way, I'm so sad, dude. I had written a verse and a chorus ahead of, because when we were gonna record these questions the other day, and I had done it in Windows Notepad.
Yeah.
But I forgot, I hadn't pressed save, and even though the computer was running, Notepad had closed somehow, and I lost the freaking thing. The file was there. It had 0 words in it, no content, and I lost my little song that I had written.
I thought you used Google Docs, which constantly auto-saves.
No, that's what I should have used. This was a one-off where I was like, it just teaches me, it's my own fault, right?
Yeah.
All right, so Across the Universe.
Now I don't know
lyrics.
the fancy guitar part. I just know the chords. So
Sure,
you know,
no worries.
I don't know. I don't know that part. But anyway, ready to go?
Ready to go.
And I'll do the high. I'll do the high part.
Words. Sure.
Or wait.
Words. 3.
2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Words are flowing out like it. Wait, hold on.
Wait, I think we're running into that problem with the delay.
The delay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because as I'm playing, you're after. I don't think
I'll start out as you're
Maybe we
singing
should just
for
do
it.
a cappella, but still,
okay.
there's still going to be a delay, though. This is not going to be.
Words are flowing out like endless rain into
So you can hear the delay, right?
All right. So how about this? How about I record it?
No.
You'll have to
How
mix
about
it
this?
in, right?
I'll play the guitar part. You
Okay.
sing, and I won't sing because then.
Okay. I'll sing as I hear your guitar.
Right, and in post I'll match it up. So ready?
So why don't you start play one bar and then I'll come in.
Okay.
Words are flowing out like endless
Wait,
rain.
I can't listen to you while I do this. So
Because it'll throw you off.
Yeah, I'm gonna take off. I'm gonna take off my
try
headphones.
it again.
Okay.
Try it again. Words are flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup. They slither while they pass. They slip away across the universe. Pulls of sorrow, waves of joy are drifting through my open mind, possessing and caressing me.
Wait, I think I messed that up. Anyway, that's probably good enough.
We got the verses.
All right, everyone. We just did that.
Man.
And please take care of yourself because
You deserve it.